Hi everyone, it's Linda from Be Clear with Bronchiectasis, and the topic for today is reflux. So reflux, as I've mentioned before in other videos, can be both acid reflux, but it also can be non-acid reflux because you can reflux water. In fact, what you're most likely to reflux would be liquid. So the first thing you can do if you're looking to control reflux, because research does show that reflux is associated with bronchiectasis. So in fact, quite a large percentage of people with bronchiectasis have reflux. And so we need to think about taking certain precautions. Now, you don't need to do everything at once. And you don't need to starve yourself. I mean, the last thing we want to do as a community that tends to be very thin is just cut back on so many foods where we're drastically decreasing our caloric intake and perhaps our macronutrients as well, proteins, carbs, and healthy fats. We want all of that. We need all of that. We need the protein to repair inflammation, to patch up those areas of inflammation, and we certainly need carbs and healthy fats for our immunity. So we do not I think it just happens really, like you're not sure what to eat or what not to eat, so you just cut back. And it could be you never really had much of an appetite to begin with. But if you follow me on social media and have been following along here, you know I feel very strongly that food is medicine and that we cannot cut back on our caloric intake because that could get us into trouble. So what can we do if we're recently diagnosed with reflux? Well, there's a lot we can do. Number one, let me point out that reflux does not only happen at night when you're lying down. I was tested with what's considered the gold standard, a 24-hour pH impedance test. And I had about 30 episodes, which sounds like a lot, but up to 50 was considered normal. And they all happened during the day. I had 0 at night, 0, which was an eye-opener. So number one, during the day, think about not bending at the waist a lot. Can you squat down? I mean, you gotta have good knees to do this. This is why things tend to be interconnected, because if you have joint problems, then it makes, controlling reflux during the day a little bit more difficult. So if you're loading the dishwasher, rather than bending over, can you squat down, making the bed, etc. When you're exercising, perhaps, not doing a lot of exercise where you're folding at the waist. And it can be limiting, especially for people who like to do yoga, but certainly there are standing yoga poses. And the other thing to keep in mind is over time, things change, things can get better. If you have what appears to be a concerning reflux issue, perhaps your CT scan showed more involvement in your lower lobes, which often happens with aspiration. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about stomach contents that are being aspirated into the lungs. And often because they're contents, they sink to the bottom of the lungs and the lower lobes get involved. And I've had that too, not significantly, but it was there. So certainly I addressed it. But getting back to not bending at the waist, trying your best during the day not to bend at the waist. And we know, of course, we've all read, or perhaps you haven't read yet, but you will, to raise the head of your bed if possible. And also try to put a few hours between when you last eat and drink and when you lie down. And I say lie down because you might be lying down during the day to take a nap. So you have to take that into consideration too, or lying down to watch television. Maybe that's your most comfortable position. But trying to put a few hours between when we're consuming not only food, but liquid. And that means, can you take your supplements during the day instead of taking them at night? Of course, there are certain pills, antibiotics, what have you, that have to be taken at night, and I'm not suggesting otherwise. But is it possible to take some of them during the day? And another trick that Dr. Gwen Hewitt suggested, she was the infectious disease head at National Jewish, is if you know you're going to be very active, like you're going to go out and play golf, you're going to be bending, putting the ball on the tee, swinging through, what have you, then eat some pretzels, eat a carbohydrate, a starchy carb. Because that starchy carb is going to absorb the liquid in your stomach. And other suggestions are to try to, instead of having large meals, maybe have 5 smaller meals, but you don't want to eat less, you just want to break it up a little bit. And there are other tricks too. I mean, certainly being aware if you have any trigger foods, tomato sauce, caffeine like coffee, wine, chocolate, fatty foods. I don't know if I've got them all, but just being aware if you do have any trigger foods. And that doesn't mean you can never have coffee or never have a glass of wine or a dish of pasta with tomato sauce. It just might mean you'll have a dish of pasta like for lunch or an early evening rather than at dinner time, or having that glass of wine with your lunch as well, and maybe just having the coffee in the morning, and trying to cut back if you're having coffee later in the day. So there are ways of controlling it. I also use something called an alginate. You can look it up. There are different types, but what it does is its base is a brown seaweed, I think it's called, and it combines with the stomach acid and forms like a little lid on the top of your stomach contents. So it becomes really a physical barrier that prevents reflux. And I do use it, especially if I want to go do something like yoga after breakfast, even if I was able to put a couple hours between breakfast and the class, I still might take a teaspoon of the alginate because I feel like it's a bit of an insurance policy for me. And I'm sure I forgot to mention certain things, but I'm just throwing it out there because I want you to know there are many different ways of addressing reflux, and I hope this was helpful. Take care, be well, until next video. Oh, I keep on forgetting. Please subscribe, please like this video, and please share it. So if you are in groups like for NTM Connect or Mayo Connect, please share this video with others. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.